The first time I truly felt invisible, I was 12. My mother and sisters were gathered in the sunlit living room, whispering excitedly over a stack of papers. I had walked in with a hopeful smile, clutching my own small folder of ideas, only to be met with polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Elena, why don't you go play outside?" my mother said, as if I were a child again, even though I had spent years trying to prove my worth. I felt the sting of dismissal then, sharp and permanent, like a burn that never quite healed. 8 years later, that memory was a wound I carried carefully, hidden under the mask of a quiet, obedient daughter. My family had made a decision without me again. The family had owned a small coastal property, a gem of land that had been passed down through generations. When I turned 18, my mother and sisters sold it behind my back. The check had been deposited, the signatures forged with ease, and I had learned of it only after the fact, staring in disbelief at a faded email notification. No one called, no one explained, no one even asked if it mattered to me. I remember the evening I confronted them. The anger had boiled over into tears, my voice trembling yet demanding. "Why didn't you tell me? Why wasn't I part of this?" My mother's gaze flickered away, uncomfortable and defensive. My sister shrugged, laughing nervously. "It's just business, Elena. Don't take it personally." One of them said. "You don't understand these things yet," said another. "It wasn't business. It was my life. My family had decided that my thoughts, my dreams, and even my presence were irrelevant." And for the first time, I realized just how small my world had become in the eyes of the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. That night, I sat alone in my childhood bedroom, the walls lined with memories I had outgrown, but had never truly left behind. I thought about the property that was gone, the laughter I had shared with my sisters in that garden, and the whispered promises my mother had made to me as a child. I thought about all the times I had tried to help, tried to contribute, tried to be part of something bigger, and had been ignored. It would have been easy to let the anger consume me, to run, never look back, and drown in resentment. But I was not a child anymore. That night, I made a quiet vow, a whisper to myself in the darkness. I would not let them define me. I would not allow their disregard to shape my life. One day, I would create something so magnificent, so undeniable, that they could not ignore me. The next morning, I packed a small bag and left home under the guise of studying abroad. Though I had no clear plan, I was determined to learn, to grow, and to save every penny I could. Every rejection, every snide remark, every sidelining glance would be fuel for the fire I knew was waiting inside me. As I stepped out onto the crowded streets of the city, the sun burning through the foggy morning air, I felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. For the first time, the world was mine to conquer, not my family, not my past, not the small role they had assigned me. I would return one day not as the ignored daughter, but as someone they could no longer overlook. And when that day came, they would finally understand. I had been invisible only because they chose not to see me. But now I was determined to shine so brightly that they couldn't look away. The city was vast, unforgiving, and intoxicating all at once. For Elena, it was a blank canvas, one that she intended to fill with her own colors. Far from the muted shades her family had imposed on her life. She had no inheritance, no connections, and no one cheering her on. But she had something stronger: determination. Every dollar she earned, every late night studying, every skill she learned was a brick in the foundation of the life she was building, brick by brick, away from the people who had dismissed her. Her first jobs were menial, far from glamorous. She waited tables in a cramped cafe, her hands raw from washing dishes, her feet aching from hours of standing. Each night she would return to her tiny apartment, the neon glow of the city outside her window reminding her of how far she had come, and how far she still had to go. She studied business plans on scraps of paper, read articles about investment and real estate, and saved every penny, sometimes skipping meals, to put money into her growing fund. Years passed and Elena transformed. The shy, overlooked girl became a woman whose quiet confidence drew attention. She took night classes, learned the intricacies of finance, and absorbed the nuances of running a business. She discovered that her knack for details, the things her mother and sisters had mocked, were precisely what made her successful. While her family squandered their wealth on frivolous purchases and empty ventures, Elena learned to invest wisely, slowly accumulating the capital she would need for her ultimate goal. But she did not share her victories. Every promotion, every business deal, every small triumph was a secret weapon, a silent reminder that she was capable, independent, and unstoppable. She refused to be drawn into their world, where ego and favoritism ruled. Instead, she built her own network, met mentors who saw her potential, and absorbed lessons that no classroom could teach. The pain of her exclusion became fuel propelling her forward rather than holding her back. Then, one evening, Elena stumbled upon an article in a travel magazine. A beachfront resort, once a dream destination for wealthy families, was up for sale. She felt a jolt in her chest as she read the listing: the golden sand, the rolling waves, the charm of a place that had always seemed just beyond reach. Her mother had once dreamed of owning such a property, of turning it into a family legacy, but now the opportunity was hers to seize. Elena visited the resort, walking barefoot along the shore, letting the wind whip through her hair. She imagined the laughter of guests, the warmth of sunrises over the ocean, the satisfaction of seeing her vision come alive. She pictured herself not as the girl who had been ignored, but as the woman who now held the power to create, to build, to command respect. The decision was immediate, though not impulsive. Elena knew that purchasing the resort would require every ounce of her savings, every lesson she had painstakingly learned, and every connection she had cultivated. But she was ready. For the first time, she saw not just the resort, but the symbolic victory it represented, a tangible proof of everything she had become in the years her family had overlooked her. As the contract was signed, Elena felt a quiet thrill, tempered by reflection. The city that had nurtured her independence, the nights spent working and studying, and the pain she had endured, all had led to this moment. She was no longer the girl her mother had dismissed, the sister who had been sidelined, the shadow in her own family's life. She was a force to be reckoned with, and soon the world, and her family would have to take notice. And deep down, Elena knew that the moment her mother learned of this victory, the delicate balance of power would shift. For now, though, she walked along the quiet beach, inhaling the salt air, savoring the first taste of freedom and triumph. The storm of the past 8 years had passed, leaving behind a woman ready to claim what was rightfully hers. The first morning in her new resort, Elena woke to the sound of waves breaking gently against the shore. The sunlight spilled across the white sand and glimmered on the water like a scattering of diamonds. She stood on the balcony of her office, overlooking the property she now owned outright, and felt a swell of pride that made her chest ache. After 8 years of being ignored, belittled, and excluded, she had arrived not with anger, but with accomplishment. The resort was everything she had imagined. The cottages hugged the coastline with quiet elegance, each window framing a slice of paradise. Guests would soon stroll through gardens fragrant with tropical blooms, their laughter mixing with the distant cry of seagulls. Elena could picture the evenings, lanterns casting warm light across polished decks as couples sipped wine, and families gathered in contented harmony. This place, once only a dream in her mind, was now alive under her care. Her first few days were a whirlwind of activity. Staff needed training, bookings had to be confirmed, and every detail had to be perfect. Elena moved with quiet authority, her decisions deliberate and precise. Every challenge she faced: broken plumbing, a double booking, a supplier delay, was met with calm determination. She had endured years of doubt and exclusion. Now she embraced control and responsibility with the certainty that only someone who had fought for everything could possess. And slowly, word began to spread. Travel magazines praised the resort as a hidden gem, and social media influencers showcased its beauty. Guests posted photos of sunsets and breakfasts by the ocean, praising the attention to detail and warmth of the staff. Elena, always meticulous, quietly smiled at each glowing review. Each compliment, each satisfied guest, was a reminder of how far she had come and how independent and capable she truly was. Then came the message that made her pause, a simple, hesitant email from her mother. It was short, almost pleading. "Elena, I've been thinking things have changed. I would like to visit, maybe even stay for a while. I miss you and I'd like to reconnect." Elena read the words several times, her fingers trembling slightly. Her mother, who had dismissed her for years, now sought entry into a world she had once ignored. She could feel the sting of their past, but also the satisfaction of having turned the tables. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice delivered by time and perseverance. For days, Elena deliberated. Part of her wanted to shut the door, to let her mother feel the weight of absence she had imposed. But another part, a quieter, deeper part, recognized the opportunity for closure, for the quiet assertion of her strength. She decided to respond, not with anger, but with measured generosity. "You are welcome to stay, but you will follow the rules of this place, just as everyone else does." When her mother arrived, Elena felt a subtle thrill. The woman who had once held all the power now stepped into Elena's world, where respect had to be earned. Every gesture, every decision, every rule of the resort was a reminder that Elena was no longer the girl who waited in the shadows for acknowledgement. She was in charge, and her mother would have to adjust or see how easily she could be outmatched. As the days passed, Elena watched her mother navigate the routines of the resort. There was no malice in her heart, only the sweet satisfaction of watching someone who once underestimated her adapt to her authority. Her mother helped with chores, learned the schedule, and slowly recognized the skill, dedication, and intelligence that had built the resort from the ground up. For Elena, the true triumph wasn't just the resort or the wealth. It was the validation of her existence, the acknowledgement that she had been capable all along. She had created beauty, success, and respect from the ashes of exclusion. And as she looked out at the ocean, feeling the salt breeze on her face, she knew the most profound revenge wasn't cruelty. It was living fully, proudly, and undeniably. Her mother's presence was a reminder, a living testament to the journey Elena had endured, and to the fact that finally she was seen. The days passed with a rhythm that was foreign to her mother, yet natural to Elena. Every morning began with the sun spilling gold across the resort, the sound of waves punctuating the start of another day, filled with work and quiet satisfaction. Elena moved through it with ease, her presence commanding yet composed, while her mother struggled to keep pace, fumbling with schedules and unfamiliar routines. It was subtle at first, missed housekeeping duties, a late arrival at the kitchen, a confused glance at a spreadsheet. Her mother, once the orchestrator of the family's decisions, was now learning what it meant to function under Elena's authority. Elena watched with a mixture of amusement and a quiet triumph. There was no cruelty in her satisfaction. It was justice born of patience and persistence, a soft yet undeniable lesson in respect. "You should check the bookings before confirming them," Elena said one morning, standing by the front desk as her mother hesitated over a reservation. Her tone was gentle but firm, leaving no room for argument. Her mother nodded, cheeks tinged with a flush of embarrassment. It was the first real acknowledgement, the unspoken recognition that Elena was no longer the girl who could be dismissed with a shrug or a condescending smile. Evenings were the hardest for her mother. She would sit on the veranda, the ocean stretching endlessly before her, and watch Elena move among the staff and guests with confidence and ease. Guests would compliment Elena's leadership, her warmth, and her attention to detail, and her mother could only nod quietly, realizing that the daughter she had once overlooked had become everything she had failed to nurture. Elena, meanwhile, felt a strange mixture of emotions. The sweetness of vindication was tempered by tenderness. She still loved her mother, in the complicated, human way that love often persists despite disappointment. But now, love was tempered by boundaries, by the recognition that she had earned her place in the world through her own efforts, not through the validation of others. One afternoon, as a golden sunset spilled across the resort grounds, Elena approached her mother, who was struggling to arrange fresh flowers for the dining hall. "Let me show you how it's done," Elena said softly, guiding her mother's hands. Her mother looked up, eyes misted, a mix of pride and humility shimmering in them. I never realized you've built all of this. Elena smiled, the first genuine, unguarded smile she had allowed herself since the property became hers. Yes, she said, all of this and more, and you get to be part of it if you follow the rules. Her tone was calm, almost playful, carrying the weight of every year she had been ignored. Her mother nodded, understanding dawning slowly. It wasn't about punishment, not really. It was about acknowledgement. For the first time, she was seeing Elena as an equal, as someone capable, independent, and undeniably in command. And perhaps somewhere deep down, it was painful to admit how long she had underestimated her child. In the weeks that followed, a tentative rhythm developed. Her mother learned, adapted, and gradually began to contribute without overstepping. She laughed when she made mistakes and accepted correction without argument. The small victories were sweet for Elena, the subtle recognition that the power dynamic had shifted, that the child who had been excluded was now the architect of their shared environment. One evening, as they watched the sun sink beneath the horizon, Elena realized that her revenge was complete, not through spite, but through living fully, brilliantly, and unapologetically. Her mother's respect, earned rather than demanded, was the final acknowledgement she had longed for. And in that acknowledgement, there was closure, a quiet triumph that no bitterness could diminish. Elena knew, as the waves whispered along the shore and the sky turned molten gold, that she had not only built a resort, but also reclaimed herself. The years of pain had forged resilience, independence, and a life her family could no longer ignore. Sweet revenge, she understood now, was not in making others suffer. It was in living so fully, so brilliantly, and so unapologetically that they were forced to see your worth. Her mother reached for her hand, tentative but genuine. Elena squeezed it, feeling the weight of the past, but also the lightness of what they could now build together. It was perfect not because it was easy, but because it was real.